Hello and welcome to the Divine Renovation Podcast, where we seek to inspire and equip you to bring your parish from maintenance to mission. My name is Dan O'Rourke, and I'm in studio today with two of my friends and a brand new table. So as excited as I am to introduce Father James Mallon and Ron Huntley, if you're just listening, you don't know what a beautiful table I'm sitting in front of, but it is wood, it is solid, and it's just a beautiful thing. Father James, what do you think of our new table?
Well, I was kind of, it's beautiful. It really is. It's very woody.
It's very woody. I feel like the studio is going from maintenance to mission now. We've got a lot more solidity in front of us. And we've also got a whole bunch of the Divine Renovation books, including Ron. This one here, this is the special one. What's that one called?
Unlocking Your Parish, Making Disciples, and Raising Up Leaders with Alpha.
By a guy named Ron Huntley. Congratulations, man. I'm still so excited that this book is out there.
And Father James Mallon.
It is awesome. It is just awesome that it's out there. So, look, guys, I wanted to just check in with you, see how things are going, because I think there's something interesting coming around the pipe. In fact, there's a couple really cool, interesting things coming around. One of them is so cool that we're going to be inviting Hannah Vaughan-Spruce onto the podcast in just a few minutes to talk about some of the things that are happening in the UK, because all three of us, but not the table, are going to be traveling across the ocean to spend some time in the UK doing a Divine Renovation Conference, DR19 UK. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I love what Hannah's doing over there, and we're coaching several churches over there that are on the ground, continuing to do great things in their parish, and when asked, sharing what they're doing, their learnings, the things they're struggling with. And so there's great things happening over there. Of course, the UK is the home of Holy Trinity Brompton, where Alpha came out of, and so it's just a wonderful place to have new breakthroughs in the Catholic Church, and I'm really excited.
So one of the things that we're doing here locally is, and I think we've talked about this perhaps on our podcast before, we're doing a leadership summit here locally at St. Benedict Parish. Father James, why don't you talk about what's the goal of a leadership summit?
Well, basically, it's a chance to really disproportionately invest into your key people, and those are your leaders, those who have leadership positions, and those who are people of influence. So typically, we would begin by saying, okay, who are the ministry leaders, who are the people on pastoral council, staff, and finance council, and even with ministry leaders, invite them to bring someone that they are apprenticing, and we bring these key people together, and generally you would get anywhere between 90 to 130 people who would come to these. Not everyone can come all the time, but the purpose was to equip those key people to be vision carriers. So people who would leave a Saturday morning gathering like that and go back to their teams excited, renewed, refreshed, really pumped up to, in turn, get the people they serve and support in ministry pumped up and excited. And so if vision is key and alignment is key, that was definitely one of the key principles. The other thing we tried to do was to try to equip them in some way to lead. We would speak into some aspect of leadership, and the goal was to make it fun and really enjoyable. And we would always finish the mornings with a time of prayer, calling on the Holy Spirit. And what I love just over the last year even is they're even better now that since I stepped aside, they're even better than they were.
Now, one of the things, Father James, you said was that there were about 90 to 110-ish people. Now, that's at St. Benedict Parish, right? So just so people have the perspective, because I don't want them to think, oh, I'll never get 110 leaders. I've only got 200 people at my parish. But like at St. Benedict, we've got roughly about 1,500, 1,600 bums and seats on the weekend.
About 1,400 on average. It can go up, it can go down. Yeah.
Right. So that gives you a sense of sort of the proportion of people at St. Benedict that are being invited into that conversation.
Yeah, and the key thing is not how many. It's that we're investing in leaders at all. Like most churches, I'd always joke that you were the unlucky person who walked by Father when all of a sudden he heard we had a hole in a ministry. He tapped you on the shoulder because he knew he could count on you and looked you in the eye and said, can you do this for me? And you couldn't say no. And then you get stuck in it for the next 30 years. And very few churches invest in their leaders over and over and over again. And we didn't either. And when we began to do that, it created a groundswell of support for where we were going, what we were doing, and why we were doing it, so that when there were misunderstandings in the pews, which happens all the time, you had all kinds of people who could speak truth and encouragement into misunderstandings and misinformation. And so that's the benefit of creating vision carriers and investing in people to help them become great leaders. Because at the end of the day, I really believe if you belong to your local parish and that's not making you a great person in all kinds of ways, then what are we doing? We have an opportunity to make people great.
Yeah.
And this is one of the ways
we
do
often
it.
used to hear that too. People would finish the morning and say, what we talked about today and what I learned today is going to help me to be a better husband, a better wife, a better mother, a better employee, a better leader in my workplace, not just in the church.
Amen.
So we really are investing in people to build them up.
A lot of pastors, parish priests aren't even sure how to start. These are the kinds of resources, though, and because Ron, you and I were talking about it just this morning. These are the kinds of resources that we're trying to equip parishes with through the Divine Renovation Network, the videos that we create. While we're not filming this one, and we're feeling a little guilty about it, we're going to make an effort to try and film an upcoming leadership summit so we can kind of capture how they run at St. Benedict Parish. At this one, though, Ron, because we're not going to be able to capture a video of it, you're actually speaking. Do you want us to share a little bit about what you plan to talk about and how that'll work for people who attend?
Sure. I've been invited to speak a little bit into the APES, which that acronym comes from Jesus made some apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some shepherds, and some teachers to build up the church, to bring people to a maturity and a fullness of faith. And so any missional church is going to have those 5 charisms, those 5 styles of ministries working effectively in their church if they're going to be sustainable and be fruitful. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about that. We have an exercise to help people figure out what their profile looks like. And then we're going to speak into it because we're all hardwired and bent towards the very things that how we were made. But sometimes because of that, we undervalue some of the things that...
Yeah, I think a proper understanding of this can help a parish be less judgmental.
Yes.
Because we instinctively judge people for not being as passionate about certain things as we are.
That's so
that
true.
There must be something wrong with you. But of course, we're often not as passionate as they are about other things. It's because we've been gifted with a different charism. One of the people who has designed a kind of a test, a kind of metric for this, is an author by the name of Alan Hirsch. He's an Australian missiologist who comes from a non-Catholic background. And I, just this morning when you told us about that, about the fact that you were going to be doing this at the summit, I said, well, this morning actually was reading something that he wrote. And I brought the book in today thinking that I might share this quote because it's a great summary. I really love this stuff. So I've never actually read from a book in a podcast before, but I'd love to do that.
Please do.
Is that okay, Dan?
Absolutely. Am I allowed to make fun of you for using a Christmas cocktail napkin as your bookmark?
It's all I could find this morning. It's all I could find is a bookmark. So, and it's, we just finished the wedding feast at Cana. We just began ordinary time. So it's okay to have leftover Christmas napkins. So here's what he said. He says, it is worth recalling that the church in the West is now facing a massive adaptive challenge. Positively, this challenge comes in the form of compelling opportunity. This is great. We've got a great opportunity. And negatively, in the form of rapid, discontinuous, and disruptive change. And I think, sadly, that's what many of us are experiencing because we have come out of a Christendom model. In many ways, we're still there. So he continues, these challenges constitute a considerable threat to Christianity, locked as it is into the more rigid and inflexible Christendom forms of church, which is what we find in most parishes. Canadian missiologist Alan Roxburgh is correct when he says that the transition from Christendom modes to the new forms necessitates the apostolic role. Environments of disruptive change require flexible and adaptive organizations and leaders to design and guide them. As the apostolic role is responsible and gifted for the extension of Christianity, so too the missionary situation requires a pioneering and innovative mode of leadership to help the church negotiate the new territory in which it finds itself. Hence, divine renovation in what we're trying to do. This is clear enough when we consider the missional church movement, which by its nature relies heavily on an innovative pioneering spirit and is therefore fundamentally apostolic in nature. But it is equally true for established churches that require fundamental reform and restructure to align themselves more perfectly with God's purposes. And that's where we find ourselves in the diocese right now. And many dioceses are basically trying to realign and restructure who they are to try to respond to this new situation that we are in a post-Christendom world. And we need a new form of innovative apostolic leadership, because if you look at those charisms, traditionally in diocesan priesthood and diocesan leadership, we've really valued the charisms of pastor and teacher. So we want people who care for the sheep And the primary mode of caring for the sheep is a therapeutic mode, visiting the sick and all this, which is good, and teaching. That's what we valued, and we've tended to not really value apostolic leadership. And apostolic leadership, well, today's the feast of the, okay. As we record, I'm not supposed to say this, but I said it. So today, as we record, it's the feast of the conversion of St. Paul.
Yes.
There I said it's too late
You
now.
broke the third wall, Father James.
There was an apostle. Apostle is someone who's sent. Paul was sent, but an apostle has this burning fire to go to break the mold, to go into new territory, to go beyond the status quo. And that's where we find ourselves as a church. And I think the APAS thing, tool and the lens can really help us do that.
It sure can, because I'll bet you there's people listening to this podcast right now that are saying, that's heresy. Like in their stomach, they're so upset with what you just said that we need to innovate and change and be flexible and all those things that you read in that book, because they want to hold on to, things that are tried, true, and tested, and right. And there's this tension. But if we can understand what their APES themes are, they'll understand themselves better.
Yeah.
And they're probably very low in apostolic, and that's okay.
Yeah. And we are, of course, talking about how we do things, not changing our core beliefs.
Yes.
And here's the thing, too. I mean, the apostle leaves the 99 to go in search of the one. But if your primary charism is pastor or shepherd, leaving the 99 is going to give you a brain hemorrhage. I mean, it's going to break your heart. You're not hardwired for that. So stop beating yourself up.
Yes.
If you're not as passionate about that as you think you should be, because that might not be the way you're called and gifted.
Right.
And so it can be a very liberating thing. Now, the key thing is that it's not up to every individual to embody all of these charisms. It's up to the church to embody these.
Yes.
And so the key is to begin with an awareness of how are you gifted and bring others around you.
So, Ron, one of the things our ministry does is we coach and journey with parishes, right? And of course, that's the team that you lead. You lead the team of coaches, the Divine Renovation coaches that speak into these parishes. What are some of the things you're seeing and hearing about innovation? What are some of the challenges or approaches that you're taking on with the coaches and with the parishes you're with?
It's interesting, because I'm guilty of saying the same things over and over and over and over again, because sometimes, it's like Scripture. Every time I read Scripture and I come back around and read a piece of Scripture I've read many years ago and really meditate on it, I hear a new thing. Like the Holy Spirit convicts me of something new as it relates to what I'm going through. And I would say the same things are true for the principles that we teach into with respect to divine renovation. And so the one theme that's consistent right straight across the board is pushback. Like, I love when, Father James, you often say, people love the idea of change, they just don't like to change. and that's the truth. And so leading through resistance is very challenging. But, I know one of the themes that has really come up a lot this week as I'm coaching is structure. People are really starting to understand, intellectually we can understand that structure is important, but people are really starting to see how when they're not adapting their structure to their mission, it has huge negative implications.
Ron, what do you mean? You're saying structure. What are you talking about when you say structure?
Okay.
You're not talking about the building, right? So
your organizational structure, who supports who? And in our old structure, when you had a problem, you would go see the priest. Yep. And in most churches, that's their structure. A priest, everybody else. And so
it's the solution to everything. Call Father. I've often joked I'm gonna write a book about all the dumb questions I've been asked throughout my years as a priest. Everything from how to change light bulbs to what to do with leftovers. Anyway,
I just eat those. But it's hard, because if you're going to lead, you need space to lead, and if you're going to create space to lead, you're going to need to change people's expectations of how they perceive you and how you interact with folks, and you're going to need to lean into your staff, your key leaders, and your key ministers, and empower them to support the people that they're responsible for, as opposed to everybody coming to see Father. And I would say the same thing happened to me when I was at St. Benedict Parish, and I went from the director of evangelization down to the director of pastoral ministry. So I was responsible for the coordinator of evangelization and all kinds of other people. And people would come to me and say, hey, Ron, such and such about Alpha, you should do this differently and everything else. I said, oh, you need to talk to Jen about that. Well, You and I have been through Alpha a long time, and we both know that you're her boss, and so that's why I'm talking to you. To which I'd say, actually, we have Jen in place because she's there to care for people like you, and I do need you to have that conversation with her, even though I knew the answer. Yeah. Even though I need to uphold the structure of people we have in place to love and support those who are in ministry. And so that's what I mean by structure. And a lot of people don't get that. They're afraid of it because they've been entrenched in a model of priesthood that you're everybody's personal chaplain.
I love what you said about you were promoted down.
Right.
You were moved down because you're there to support. You talk about supporting rather, about supports rather than reports. Your comments reminds me of a message that came in through my website just a few days ago from a man in the Czech Republic. The original book, Divine Renovation, was published in Czech about 6 months ago, I think.
Oh, great.
Actually, it was just published in Dutch as well, just this week. But anyway, back to the Czech Republic. This man wrote to us and said he's been reading the book. He loves it. And he would really love to share it with his priest because he thinks his priest would love it. However, he's scared to. He says, my priest is a beautiful man. He says, a very loving, kind man. And all the life of the parish is centered on him. Mm-hmm. What is meaningful in the parish is going to him because he's such an amazing man. And here was this man's dilemma. Says, if I show him your book, I know he's going to get excited, but it's going to kill him.
Right.
Because he's hardwired for everything to go through him. He needs to personally care for everyone and do everything himself. Now, there might be a lot of things going on, but I bet you that guy probably has shepherd as one of his top charisms.
And probably high in relationship building and doesn't want to disappoint anybody.
That's right. So, but the point is that leader, that priest, unfortunately, is going to be a bottleneck for his parish. His parish could be explosive in terms of impacting the world, but it's going to be bottlenecked because of maybe this man's inability to bring other people around him and to get the right kind of structure and the right model of his ministry as well.
It kind of reminds me of what happened at St. Benedict Parish with discipleship. At one point, we had about 30% of our parishioners engaged in discipleship programs like Bible studies and so forth, but our model was to have it all in the building. Yeah. And so our building was jam-packed 24/7. It's the parking lot filled and everything else. And we maxed out, but yet we knew there was so much more potential. And so we had to shift our model. Yeah. And then we pushed it out into people's homes, and it freed up the church, and it enabled us to raise up more leaders and multiply the amount of people who could benefit from going deeper in their faith. And so every now and again, we have to reevaluate the things we've done. Because if you say this all the time, if you're successful, you're going to have to change your structure.
Yeah, because your success, if it works, it's going to change the very thing that you're working on. It's going to be different. Yeah.
All right, guys, I want to cut us off here because I'm excited to take a brief pause, and then we're going to be right back with Hannah Vaughan-Spruce, who's going to be joining us from the UK. Welcome back, and welcome Hannah Vaughan-Spruce. Hannah, you work with you're based in the UK, and you've been working alongside us now for a long time. I guess over a year, working with parishes in the UK and trying to get Divine Renovation going. And you've been able to connect with lots of parishes. So it's so cool to have you on this podcast to learn more about what's happening out there, and especially before us three guys get on a plane and try and visit you. So thanks for joining us, Hannah.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
I'd be interested, Hannah, to hear, because a lot of our listeners, of course, aren't in the UK, and you're so connected with on the ground with pastors and churches. And I'd love for you to share with us a little bit of what's the state of the Catholic Church in the UK? What are pastors wrestling with, and where's their heart?
Sure, yeah. I think the picture in the UK, it's probably quite similar to other places in the West. I'm sure it's very similar to the situation in Canada, Australia, other parts of Europe, that definitely decline over the last 10, 20 years. And I think one of the big things that we see, it's probably the same in Canada as well, is that immigration really props up the numbers in our parishes. So, that there would be, I would say most parishes that I visited would seem to be full of, people from other parts of the world, from Nigeria and Asia and, different parts of Europe. So I think, especially in London, the picture in London, it seems like churches are full perhaps, and masses are still happening and all of that, but it's really propped up by people who've come in from outside of the UK. But I think when you meet priests and parishes, so many of them have the same stories, the things that they're struggling with. I spoke with one priest the other day. He's kind of gradually become interested in divine renovation, and he's kind of connected with some parishes that are using some of these ideas. And he just said, for him, like having a team around him for the first time, it's just totally changed his experience of the priesthood. Like he felt alone before, and now he's with this team, and they're praying together, they're talking, they're dreaming, they're like visioning about the future. So that's I think that kind of story shows what the experience is for lots of priests, that they're alone and they have this huge burden. There's fewer priests, often the same number of masses that they have to do, and the same kind of burden of work. You would hear those kinds of stories all over the place that priests and parishes are struggling with that.
And it's one of the things that I remember last time I was with you there in the UK, one of the things that did come through really clearly was that priests really were feeling a major difference when they had a team around them. And when we say a team, we're thinking about like a senior leadership team, right, yeah. Father James? Yeah. And it seems like what strikes me as odd, and this is speaking as someone who's not a priest, what strikes me as odd is that it's so foreign to so many people in those leadership roles. Like it just seems to be the norm that they don't have that a priest does not have a team to help him lead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't necessarily foreign for a priest to maybe consult with some key people. I don't think it was ever done really in an intentional way to try to get balance or anything. But a senior leadership team is not just about consultation, and it's not leading by committee either. It really is a form of shared leadership in a way that the ordained leader is not abdicating that leadership role. So that's just the model of leadership that we've inherited. The priest as the lone ranger, as the one who, really has all the answers. And that's the culture that we've come out of. And again, as like the quote we read at the beginning, in a Christendom model, that was okay because, most priests can do what they were trained to do, but to be leaders in a church in a post-Christendom world, we were not trained for this. And we still know how to do all of these things. We're competent over here, but in these areas, if we're going to move into that territory, we need help. We can't do it alone. And that's a huge burden that meant that most priests and most bishops, even worse for bishops, the sense that ultimately, the end of the day, with really difficult decisions, I'm alone. I alone can make those decisions. And some decisions I don't even share with people because I feel somehow I've got to keep them secret. I can't show vulnerability. I can't even admit to a group of people that I'm struggling with a particular question. And I think that model of leadership is going to lead an organization into a deficit position, whether it's in the church or anywhere else.
So Hannah, with parishes, as you go out and speak to them and you have conversations about things like senior leadership teams, how are you being received? Are priests, is their starting point one of interest, curiosity, or is there a resistance? What is it like?
You know what? I think deep down, like, this is what they want, if you know what I mean. I meet so many priests who I think this is what they would really like, but, moving from where they are now to that place where you have a healthy, functioning team, that's really tough, isn't it? And I've just that, and you will have seen that more than me even, but I've seen parishes go through different numbers of teams because the first one didn't work and they had the wrong people on it or whatever. So it can be really, really tough, I think, to get to a place where it's actually really working and it's healthy and all of those kinds of things. But I think deep down that's what people want. They don't want to be. Who wants to be alone leading something? No one wants to be alone. Everyone wants to have people alongside them to be responsible with them, to carry that burden. And I just, especially this priest that I met the other day, I just felt there was a real humility in what he was sharing. He was saying, I was alone before and now I've got people around me. And just to admit that and to admit that with humility, and it's a vulnerable place to be, isn't it? To say that. So I just find that beautifully courageous, and yeah.
Hannah, what's the range of sizes of churches in suburbs and cities? What would be the range of some of the sizes of some of the churches?
Yeah, I mean, huge range. So there would be lots of, as I said, in London, a lot of the churches would be quite large. I think one of the biggest churches that's being coached in Divine Renovation is about 1,200 people at the weekend. And then, especially up north in England, there are some tiny parishes. There's a parish that has been in one of our little cohorts that has 150 people who come to church at the weekend. And but amazing, they are an amazing parish. They've just finished, I think it was their first series of Alpha, and they had 30 plus people in this Alpha. So it's almost like a fifth of their whole church.
That's awesome.
Already. So yeah, I mean that's amazing, because it just shows, that something is really working there among this tiny little parish of 150 people who come on a Sunday. So yeah, it's cool.
Sense of what's the culture around staffing? So, you take a church of 1,000, 1,200. How many staff would the average church in the UK have on board with a church of that size?
Yeah, I mean, average church is probably very similar to Canada. You maybe have a secretary to assist the priest, like an administrator. Like very exceptionally, you might have someone part-time doing catechesis or something like that, but that would be very unusual. So other than that, like nothing.
Wow. Ron, I got a question for you, buddy. In all seriousness, so when parishes decide to go on mission, one of the things, at least the ones that connect with us, they often they start talking about, how should I build my team? Who should I bring on to my team? And particularly, who's the first staff person I should be bringing on? What advice would you give to them?
Well, Father James says about staff people, you have to ask yourself, are you good at administration? If you are, then you'll probably do the administration and then hire somebody for evangelization. But if you're getting buried in administration and you're passionate about evangelization, you might want to hire somebody to help you get out from underneath all the administrative work you do to free you up to do that. So, but evangelization, we have to go on the attack.
The key thing now, we're talking about the UK. When as you know, I grew up in Glasgow, Scotland, and when I was a kid,
you might have mentioned that on the podcast.
Back on the days when there was only 3 TV channels. Hannah, do you remember that? Remember BBC Two?
No, she doesn't.
No, you're younger than me. Well, I remember on weeknights in BBC Two around 7:15 at night, there was a half-hour TV show called Pot Black. Oh, and some of you listening in the UK who are more mature in years might remember that Pot Black was a snooker TV show. And I used to watch, I loved watching professional snooker players.
Right, yes.
Because it was a very different thing, because whenever I played pool or snooker, I just wanted to sink the ball. But in real snooker, you're always playing your next shot. Even as you play the present shot, you're always setting up the next shot. In fact, oftentimes you're a couple of shots in your mind, you've got it planned out. And as you sink a ball, the primary task is to set up for the next shot. And I think it's the same with staffing. Begin from where you are. It takes time. It's not, you're going to staff up to an appropriate level over a number of years. Don't be overwhelmed. But any staffing position, you've got to be putting creating a staffing position with the next position in mind. So avoid staffing positions that are going to thwart that. So, for instance, it's often a common thing in churches to say, well, the first thing we're going to do is hire a youth minister. It's because even grumpy parishioners believe we should do something for the youth. So let's start a youth group. But maybe some of you have heard me say this before. The difference between adults who have conversions and teenagers who have conversions is that adults write checks, or in light of last week's podcast, adults download apps by which they can give funds. The point is, it's if you invest in evangelizing and raising up missionary disciples, it will open up the door for your next hire. Whereas some positions don't do that. So keep that in mind. And I think that the biggest investment you can make at the beginning is adult evangelization. And like you say, you've got to say, as a priest with limited bandwidth, it's not so much a question of time as what takes my energy, what energizes me, or what sucks my energy out. And if you get excited about evangelization and admin work kills you, then make your first hire someone to do the admin work so it can free you up. But definitely adult evangelization is the beginning, because that is going to unleash a lot of resources.
And there's a difference there between hiring staff necessarily and creating a team in terms of a senior leadership team. I mean, those are two different things. They can be the same. Like you could hire a staff person that would make a great senior leadership team member, but
technically, I think that no church should hire a staff person who would not make a great senior leader. In fact, the goal in a perfect world, in a perfect parish, which of course doesn't exist, but the goal would be to have a parish team where everyone would be an amazing candidate to be on that
Candidate,
team.
not that everybody would be on it.
That's right, but a candidate, that they have that gifting, because what is it that we're asking for? Well, what are your key things? That you're totally sold out for the vision, that you're healthy in an emotional way, that you're aware of your particular giftedness, you have appropriate level of vulnerability, and you're able to foster trust and deal with conflict in a healthy way. That should be every staff member,
Amen.
right? But here's the thing, Hannah, I want to, one of the things that I've heard often in Europe, whether it's in Italy or France or Germany, is a very different situation. But even in the UK and in Spain is this idea, well, staff who actually do pastoral ministry as opposed to like a janitor or a secretary or a housekeeper, that only happens in America or perhaps in Canada. That I've heard it over and over again. That doesn't happen here. And I think if anything, that I would love to see the fruit of the influence of divine renovation is that it can start to happen. Because when something that never used to happen starts to happen, guess what? If you keep into it, it eventually becomes the norm.
I think seeing parishes where they're beginning to do that, you just see the fruit of it. So I've been spending a lot of time over the last few months at the parish of Our Lady of Walsingham, which is in East London, Father James Mackay and Jordan, who've been on the podcast before. And it's just been amazing being there and seeing what's happening in that parish. They're a year or so into coaching at this stage, and they've got, an amazing, strong senior leadership team. Obviously, Jordan is employed by the parish. He's the only one so far. But, just the impact that has had on what they're able to do there, how they're able to raise up other leaders to lead Alpha. Jordan's no longer leading Alpha himself. They've raised up new leaders to do that, and leaders in their Connect group and that kind of stuff. It's just been really beautiful to see that happening, and to see a huge, leadership pipeline that's, enabled to be created.
Whoopsie daisy.
Hannah, you just dropped something. What I'm going to just note is it would be awesome if you had a solid wood table just like this over at your side of the ocean. Can I ask you a question? Because you've been doing this for a little while and working with a bunch of different parishes and even connecting with bishops there in the UK. I would love to understand what you see might have changed over the last year. Do you sense any change? Like, I'm talking macro level. Like on the macro level, are you sensing that there's a shift, that the conversation is shifting?
People are talking more about evangelization. Do you know what I mean? Like, people know that it's something parishes need to do, right? And they talk about it, and you hear of all kinds of different initiatives that different dioceses are doing and that kind of thing. I think we've been mapping out the parishes in the UK that we've been connected with in some way. Either they've come to an event or whatever, a part of like groups that we've been doing or whatever. And we've actually mapped it out on a map. And it's just interesting to see, I think, the parishes that we think are being influenced by the ideas of divine renovation. They might not be subscribed to the association, or they might not be coaching, but they're taking up some of these ideas. And I mean, it's very, very early days, but I think fascinated to see how that's going to develop, how these ideas and ways of doing things are, just start to be embedded in like normal parish culture. I think that's what excites me. How can this movement really influence more widely, even beyond the parishes that are being coached? How is it influencing further afield?
Can I ask a question, Hannah? At the beginning, you talked about how in some places, the impact of immigration is sustaining things. But does anyone flag that? Because of course, if immigrants are keeping your numbers up, which is great that they're there,
yes, but obviously
that reveals the fact that the church in the UK, in many places, is not even doing maintenance. Because remember, maintenance is primarily about maintaining the flock. So there's entire generations of the flock that have disappeared. They're gone. They're not there. And is anyone flagging that? Is anyone ringing the alarm bell? Because if that dynamic is there, just give it another generation and all the kids of these immigrants will be gone as well.
Right. Yeah.
So we're actually bleeding in a very dangerous way. And is anyone talking about this among, say, the bishops or the leadership of the church? Or is it, well, you know, our pews are full and that this is great?
Well, I'm not really privy to I hope so. I mean, like the statistics say it. So in the UK, for every one person who becomes a Catholic, so for everyone who became a Catholic at Easter, 10 people left the church. And so, yeah, it's a hemorrhage. It's a big hemorrhage. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I wouldn't say, I don't hear much about the urgency, if you know what I mean. Like, there isn't a sense of urgency other than in, you know, the parishes that are really getting it and really doing things differently. But, you know, they're a minority, you know, they're a very small minority. But I think, you know, the next 10 years is going to it's going to increase the urgency, isn't it?
You know, it's funny you're talking about, Hannah, you were talking about connecting with people who aren't directly connected to us here in Halifax, but are through the books, taking some of these principles and implementing them, and how exciting that is for you. It was funny, I was talking to Father Stephen Langridge from the UK yesterday as we were coaching, and he said, "Hey, did you see that article that came out of Australia?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "Yeah, an auxiliary bishop wrote a blog or an article, and it was called How to Kill DR in Your Parish, 10 Ways to Kill DR in Your Parish Before You Even Get Started." I thought, oh, that's awesome. I got to see that article. But isn't that cool that, to your point, Hannah, like there are lots of people that are wrestling with these principles and trying to put them into play and sharing their learnings with other people and inspiring them. And we're just thrilled about that.
Yeah.
So, Hannah, one of the things, I mean, like the reason we work with parishes isn't because we just have a passion for parishes, it's because we have a passion for people. Are you seeing, like, is Divine Renovation making a difference in people's lives? Is your work there making a difference in people's lives? And do you have any examples that might sort of help us understand what you're seeing?
Yeah, sure. Well, do you know, we have this conference coming up in 2 weeks, and there's a girl working with us at the moment on the conference. And I mean, even she is from the parish of Our Lady of Walsingham. And, you know, 2 years ago, she wouldn't have been in church. She wouldn't have been really anywhere connected with her faith. And it's just exciting, you know, now she's on our team and she's helping plan this conference. You know, she's a phenomenal girl. It's quite funny because we're based at the Alpha offices in London. And so she came in for the first day, came up on the lift, and she bumped into this guy immediately. They had been working together years ago. And since, both of them have gone through conversions through Alpha, and now like meet together at Alpha offices in London, you know, really crazy. But so she's one example. But I think what's cool is, you know, we keep hearing from parishes, obviously at the end of every Alpha, so before Christmas, lots of parishes finished Alpha for that term. And, you know, you just hear stories each time of people who've had changed lives. So we'll be sharing some of those stories at the conference as well. So yeah.
What I love, it reminds me of a lot of the stories that we have here locally, like your story of the woman who's helping you with the conference there, who 2 years ago wouldn't have had any faith, and now she's helping to organize a national conference around you know, renewing parishes. I mean, that's crazy. Like if you just take a step back, like, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's the key thing, you know, because sometimes we can get caught speaking at the level of ideas and structure and organizations, but principles. But it's all about people. It's all about mobilizing local churches, parishes, which are the people in the pews, to be ambassadors for Christ, to help people come to know about him and come to know him and fall in love with him, and themselves take up the role in the mission of the church. It's ultimately about people. It's about changed lives. And I think that that's a key value of any Divine Renovation event, that we always feature not just, you know, a priest or a parish leader saying how their lives have been impacted, but people who were, you know, people out there whose lives were transformed by a church that's actually decided to go on mission.
There's a lesson, I think, in this story and all the other stories that are like it. And I think there's a bunch that come to my mind of experiences I've had through this ministry over the last couple of years where you can see this kind of thing. But the lesson I think that's present is, like, you might be a priest listening to this right now going, like, I don't have the right people in my pews. I don't have the people yet.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
And this is the thing, right? Like, not only do you...
Our people look just like your people. They're regular
Amen.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing, because what happens is, I think once you start to go on a mission, those people just show up. They're people that you already had, or they're people that you haven't yet encountered, but all of a sudden you've got them, and you've got people who 2 years ago didn't even have faith, all of a sudden organizing things at your parish and doing all sorts of crazy things. And it's just like our leadership summits, Ron. Like our leadership summits at St. Benedict Parish, how many of those people weren't even Christian like 5 years ago? I mean, it's crazy.
I was actually reading yesterday from a book where the author said how sometimes in the world of the church, people say, yeah, well, that's your particular gifting. You're that kind of church leader. You're the church leader that's gonna rally people and charge the hill and take the hill. And me, I'm the kind of church leader who looks after grandma. And the point is that it's not either or. Like church leaders, you're called to take the hill with grandma. Grandma's the one who's going to take the hill with you.
Amen.
And I'll tell you, there's some amazing grandmas out there. I mean, I remember in the first years at St. Benedict's parish, I mean, for the most part, that very first Alpha team we had, the average age was like 65.
Oh, absolutely.
The renewal we experienced would never have happened without the grandparents who did most of the work.
Amen.
And that generation helped to mobilize that whole parish. And as the years went on, the age went down and down and down and down. But don't write off grandma.
Amen.
And the passion that she's got, and especially when grandma gets on fire, it's not just her prayers that are going to make a difference. She can take that hill with you as well. So begin with the people you've got, because that's who the Lord has given you.
Well, and you say, Dan, when you begin to go on mission, people show up. What do we mean by mission? Because it's when somebody has a transformational encounter with Jesus and the love of God is poured into their hearts through the Holy Spirit. That's when they go on mission. So that's what we mean. It's not a mindset. It's not a book. It's not a set of behaviors. It's an encounter with the risen Lord in a way that changes your life. That's what we're talking about.
And can lead to simple invitations.
Amen.
Invitations.
So Henry, you've invited us over to the UK, and we love coming out there. It's part of it's a special place for the ministry, and which is why we love everything that's happening there, and all the pastors and parish priests, as you call them, all the parish priests who are on fire and doing awesome things. So we're going to this big event, right? And so what are you hoping will happen there?
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting. We're like 2 weeks away now, so it's like, those final weeks before the event is very hectic, and but we're starting to get very excited about it. There are just a couple of moments this week. I was there's 3 MCs at the event, and we were just prepping our notes, and we just suddenly got really excited. When it hits you, like this is going to be amazing. I think what's cool is we have such a network of parishes around the country now who are coming together. So I think any time that these amazing group of people gets together, we know it's going to be fun. We know God's going to do some amazing things, because he always does. And then also, there's lots of people coming for the first time to a Divine Renovation event, and people who are just curious to find out what this is about. So yeah, we're just excited to meet them as well. And we're just trying to structure the event in such a way that there's something for everybody. There's something for the people who are just like kind of curious. There's something for the people who are getting started. And then there's something for the people who are a bit further down the line. So I think it's just going to be a great time of everyone getting together and just seeing what the Holy Spirit is going to do.
I think, Hannah, what you said, one of the things you said there is so key. It's key to what we see as a way to really increase the momentum of missional parishes globally, and that's in part like what you said was, it's that network of parishes that are already on the ground doing things around Divine Renovation, and we're inviting them up onto stage, right? It's not like, they happen to be in the audience too. No. We're part of our goal is to give those parishes, those parish priests, give them platform to speak about what's happening in their parish, in their context. And Ron, this all along was part of the dream, wasn't it? Yeah, because when Father James wrote the book Divine Renovation, our phone started to ring like crazy, and it was problematic because we had a church to run and a vision to strive towards, and it was problematic, and we realized that we needed to raise up more people who could help more people, and so the vision has always been to raise up others so that they can be a blessing to the people around them. And also, in addition to that, when this begins to happen, people who are
in very different contexts than, you know, a large suburban parish in Nova Scotia. When life begins to grow in those places, and even under the leadership of pastors or parish priests whose leadership style and personalities are maybe different from mine, it blows apart this idea that, yeah, that's good for you, but that could never happen here. Mm-hmm. So that's another value in that as well. And people are going to learn from people in that context. Like, how did you take these principles and these values and bring them into your context? Because it's not just about imitating what was done at St. Benedict Parish.
Hannah, one of the things with the Divine Renovation event, and you know this now, and I say that with a hint of sadness in my voice, is that there are tremendous amounts of work. It's just a tremendous amount of work, which is why, in the past, at least with Divine Renovation events, bringing in volunteers to help has been so critical to the success. It's a success element for the experience, but it's also a success element for actually being able to pull the thing off. Whereas you're not doing this at a single parish, have you been able to, are there volunteers? Are people coming alongside? Are they getting behind what's happening?
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting seeing the change from, so you came to do maintenance to mission.
Which was the name of the conference we did about a year ago, yeah.
Exactly. And just seeing the difference between running that conference and this conference is really interesting. So I think one of the things is, if you remember that conference, you guys led all the seminars. We had, Father Simon came over as well, and Kate Robinson, and it's just amazing. But this time around, we've got some of our own parishes leading seminars, which is really exciting. And just seeing some of their planning and the notes behind all of that, it's going to be amazing. Like, these guys are they're really doing it. They're really involved, and they're going to be sharing. Great. And the volunteers. So all of our volunteers come from the parishes that are being coached at the moment. So we have about 20 altogether. We're still supported by Alpha. Alpha's amazing, and so they bring along their teams as well. But we're going to have 20 volunteers from the parishes that are being coached, and that's exciting too, because people get to find out from them what's going on in their parishes, how things are working, and they just get to connect and hear from them. So yeah.
I'm so excited. You're bumping me right up. I'm so excited. I can't wait to meet your volunteers.
What's really neat, Hannah, and what gets me what really heartens me is the fact that we're seeing what we'd hoped to happen in terms of we're seeing those parishes own the mission. We're seeing those parishes drive the mission. We're seeing those parishioners, particularly those parishioners. We see them stepping up, spending their time, trying to make it a good experience so that we can get more parishes involved in the mission, more people on fire for the opportunity, so that we can yet reach more people, so we can bring more people to Jesus. And I just love how it's all coming together. So Hannah, is the conference sold out? If people wanted to go, is it too late?
No, it's not too late. People can still sign up. So, you just go on to our website, the Divine Renovation UK website. So it's divinerenovationuk.org, and you can book your place right there. But there's still spaces.
And if you've got the Divine Renovation app, you're also able to hit the conference button on the app. And we added a book now button on that page. Our team's getting more and more excited about our app these days. So that's good. So we've actually added that as an ability, as a way to be able to book. Now there's already hundreds of people that are registered. But there's still some more space, which is fabulous and exciting. So if you want to catch some Father James Mallon live and some Ron Huntley live and Hannah and plenty of other people who are based in the UK, it's a great opportunity. It'll probably be the last conference we do there for a little while, because we're traveling all over the world, and that we've been to the UK a few times. So this is a special opportunity if you want to be able to spend some time with our team there. Hannah, is there anything else you wanted to share about about what you're seeing in the UK, or how you feel about how things are going before we wrap up?
I think things happen so quickly, like I think some of the testimonies that were at the last conference, we've got, brand new stories, and people who were touched at the last conference are sharing their stories at this conference, because so much has happened for them in the year or so in between. And I'm just excited for anyone in the UK to just come along and just see what this is all about, and come and experience it for yourself. Yeah.
I'd like to ask as well, for everyone who is listening or watching, that this task of pastoral conversion, of pastoral renewal, is fundamentally a spiritual task, and there is a spiritual battlefield, and one of the weapons, of course, that we use is intercessory prayer. So I'm really going to put a call out and a real ardent request that everyone listening, particularly prays for God to open doors during these days. And the actual dates of the conference, Anna?
The 7th and 8th of February.
And that's what days of the week are those?
Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday. So wherever you are in the world, if you can intercede for that, for those days, and even the days off, if you can go to daily mass, maybe offer your mass, pray the rosary, whatever way, go have Eucharistic adoration, whatever way you can contribute to this conference. You can be with us there in spirit for sure, and to help things move along through your prayers.
And for all those listeners who are joining us from the UK, we're excited to be able to go and visit you and see you in person. We hope that we'll see you at that conference, at that event. I know we're flying a team here from Halifax over, and then of course we've got a wonderful team on the ground in the UK. So it's going to be an amazing time. And so if you haven't yet booked your ticket, this is a tremendous opportunity. Do it through the app, do it through the website, divinerenovationuk.org, or download our Divine Renovation app on the Google Play Store or on the iTunes Store. And we look forward to seeing you all again next week. God bless.